I really messed up on the music there. Let's restart this. I'm way off. I'm way off. We're going to leave the mics on. Too many things to do. Stand by. Hello and welcome to Let's Pod This. My name is Andy Moore. Friends, it's good to be with you. Again, this week we're back. Week 2 in a row. This is episode 302 out of 11 million that we plan to do over the next few years. I'm just kidding. But it's good to be with you. I hope you enjoyed our episode last week with Dr. Keith Gaddy. He'll be joining us again in just a couple of weeks, hopefully several times over the next semester. He's a funny guy. He's got lots of insights. He's been around the block a few times, as they say. Joining me today is our new intern, Lena Buchanan. Hi, Lena.
Hello.
Great to have you with us.
Good to be here.
We're going to talk about a few different things today. We're going to talk about campaign finance, about money in politics, about fundraising, campaign debt, congressional disclosures or lack thereof of stock trades, and the absurdly small penalties they face that we just learned about a little while ago. Lena, when I read out loud to you how little the penalty is.
That's just insane.
It's insane.
That's like you said, that's less than like a speeding ticket.
Yeah. I don't want to give it away, friends, but like literally pennies on the dollar for congressional indiscretions, which should be of probably no surprise to any of us, sadly. So first, and then we're talking about gerrymandering at the end, of course, because it still continues. It's in the news every day. This is a wild and wacky reality in which we live. Listeners, I want to say a couple of things up front. In case you don't already know, we're doing these these podcasts on video as well. So many of you have been listening to us for years and years in an audio only format. And while I still recommend that, because I have a face for radio, we do offer this as a video thing now. I've got cameras set up here in our studio. I'm trying to look at the camera some and at Lena. And also, we're producing this on the fly. So I'm doing the edits. If you watched last week's episode and you just said, man, this camera work is needs some work. Yeah, it sure does. That was me. I'm doing better this week already. But it'll be available on our YouTube channel, and then we'll, put some clips on social media, which you may have seen. All right. So first, let's talk about the Oklahoma Ethics Commission. They voted this week, I believe, or last week, to allow, it's on the 14th of August. I don't even know what day it is today. The 22nd we're recording this. All right. So like a week ago, the Oklahoma Ethics Commission met and voted to allow lawmakers to use campaign funds for security. Lena, did you read this article?
I did. And I honestly, until we talked about it, I didn't see the problem with it because my first thought was, okay, yeah, we were just protecting the people. That's a good thing. That's not necessarily a bad thing.
Right, because this really comes on the heels of the tragedy in Minnesota. Yeah. What was your takeaway from this article?
I mean, I think I still stand by the fact that I think it is important to protect the people in elected government. I think that is still important, but I think it's interesting that they're taking money from their campaigns instead. I think that's kind of an interesting approach to it.
Yeah, it's tough. I don't want anyone to be harmed.
Right.
And, when the news broke about the murders in Minnesota of state lawmakers, who are normally folks who are not even like readily recognizable on the street to most people, right? Just nerds like us.
Yeah.
And even then, not everybody. But I heard about it from my representative, Ellen Pogmiller here. I think she was the one that sent me the article, and I was just like, oh my gosh. Because it really hit home. I'm sure it did for her, right?
Yeah,
and for other colleagues.
Absolutely.
And I think the response from the state legislature here on both sides of the aisle was like, hey, thank you, Ethics Commission. Like this, not everyone's going to do it or even feel the need to, but it's certainly there are some people who
it's
are going to.
It's definitely nice to have that safeguard there because, like, if you need it, it is there.
Yeah, that's right. And I don't even, it allows them to afford security. And this might be And I know in other states, I've talked to lawmakers who like have been able to use campaign funds to pay for web tools to like scrub their information from the internet, like their address and that kind of stuff, to like help give them not a shroud of secrecy, but like a
Right.
little more protection.
Yeah.
And it's weird to like be in the public eye and also be like, this also puts me and my family at risk.
It is very odd that like lawmakers have their, it's always been odd to me that they have like their addresses fully posted places where people can just find and then go protest in front of their house.
Right.
That always felt a bit like, I understand there's a certain amount of like wanting to be open with the public, but I feel like that's something that maybe not entirely necessarily to have their address.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Cause you have to think of like, what's the worst possible outcome.
Because a lot of them have kids. Like, that's
Yeah.
a danger to their kids. I'd be more concerned about my kids than, yeah.
Well, yeah, I think you're right. And, you know, the events in Minnesota, like you just start reflecting on things differently. So like I think about when I used to live in Senate District 30, which is Leader Kurt's district. We lived down the street from her, right? And she would walk her dog and I'd see her. I'm out there with my kids in the front yard or doing gardening or whatever. And it was not uncommon. And like most of our neighbors didn't even know who she was. But if that was me or my wife, and suddenly we felt unable to do some of that and also unable to afford to like do anything about it, right? Like the president has like basically unlimited funds to like build a thing.
Right.
I was just the other day, I was watching the episode of The West Wing in the final season where,
Spoilers.
yeah, sorry, you're just about to start.
Yeah.
Anyway, President-elect Santos is like, they're talking about his family staying in their family home, and the Secret Service is like, oh, no problem. We're going to block off the street and build guard shacks at both ends, and all your neighbors will have to check in, and anyone who comes to their house will have to check in. And his
Normal
wife is
people
like,
cannot do that.
yeah, normal people cannot do that. And she was like, why would we disrupt the lives of all these people just because you got elected president? And the Secret Service is like, that's our job. Like, that's the thing. Okay, so the president is very different than a state lawmaker. But murder's not,
Right.
right? And that's the thing is like, and the Ethics Commission, in fact, during the meeting, has several cases that are just referenced by like case numbers because they're currently investigations are ongoing. It is, not, I don't know if it's uncommon. It is certainly, present that our state lawmakers here receive threats. There was, in fact, former House member Mark McBride found a tracking device on his truck. And that was, I think, referenced in the non-doc article here as well. But I remember when that happened and he was just like, hang on, like who is tracking me and
Right.
why? Like,
What is the purpose?
yeah. And it is one thing to think of it being somebody else and something else about yourself. And even when you and I were chatting about this, like you said to me, like you're kind of a public figure. And I was
Yeah.
like, oh shit. Well,
Yeah.
not
That's a little bit of a concern. It's not in the same scale, but
Right.
it is like, it does bring that into question.
right. You know, what's funny is that a lot of lawmakers have like their House or Senate district as their license plate, right?
Right.
And my license plate says "fix this." Like people, if they know me, like they know that's who I am. And so it's like, well, should I not do that? No, I've never had any threats, Lord willing, and never will. But I think that kind of awareness is important.
Just something to note. So now maybe you're more aware of your surroundings, or other people are a little bit more aware.
Right. Exactly. So that was a really interesting story in non-doc. And now that we're doing video, Lena, people can see that I'm like
Fiddling with
things. I'm like, oh, this camera's battery's low. I should plug it in. So I'm going to do it while I'm on camera.
Oh, nice.
Listeners, this is the fun stuff you get on the video version. I'm going to try to fix your camera without
moving it.
without distracting. Okay, good. Success. Our next article is also about campaign finance at the state level in particular. This is from Oklahoma Watch, written by Paul Monies, and in quotes, one Andy Moore. Not that I'm the focus of this episode of this story, but I was glad that Paul called about this. He and I had a really interesting conversation about it, and the article is even more interesting. But the title is "Show Me the Money. Some Oklahoma candidates carry huge campaign debts." And I will say, when Paul called, it was really about candidates loaning themselves money or loaning their campaigns money, which we see in the news, especially when it comes to like I don't know, presidential campaigns where like Trump loaned himself and we know about Trump's loans and having to raise money to pay him back. And we think, oh, sure, you're running for president or even for Congress. These are big, expensive elections. But the article is really about state level folks, like including state legislators, right? So like one of them, Representative Jim Shaw, who ousted an incumbent, right? He that was the chair of Appropriations and Budget, Kevin Wallace. And when Shaw loaned himself a bunch of money, I think cumulatively right now, he's a freshman. He's run once. He's got to run again next year. But he loaned himself $385,000. It's like his total debt, I think, right now. So he's, according to the article, one of the more indebted campaigns. Now, typically, for reference, a typical like state legislative race might cost $80,000 to $100,000, which is not nothing.
Right.
Which is why they got to raise money. And if you're taking on a member of the leadership, it's going to be a bigger race, right? Like, I think it said Wallace spent like $700,000 on that, which a lot of it he had raised previously was just kind of sitting in his campaign account. But that's a lot of money.
Yeah, that's quite a lot of money.
In the article, Shaw responded to the interview and he said he wasn't mad at it. He said, I feel like this is an investment in the future of the state and the future of my family. And I got to tell you, Lena, if I don't have this kind of money, but if I told my wife, listen, honey, we're going to spend $385,000 so I can win a seat in the state House of Representatives.
It's for the state.
It's for the state.
It's not for you. It's for the state.
For the next 2 years, I'm going to be in this office and I'm going to loan myself $385,000. That's more than double our budget. And let's fix this. And I said, it's an investment in our family. I don't think my wife and I would see eye to eye.
I don't think you'd agree on that one. I think that might be one of those things.
Now, according to the article, like Shaw had some businesses he sold, and I don't know his financial situation. Clearly, it's better than mine. But by most regular person standards, that's a big chunk of change.
Yeah.
To loan, and it sounded like he doesn't expect to necessarily like even get it back.
Right. No, that's not what I got. It was definitely like, that money's gone. It's been used for running. That's it. That's it.
Well, I think Governor Stitt, whoops, look at me turning on the wrong screen. I think Governor Stitt, in his first run for governor in 2018, loaned himself something like $10 million. I don't know if he paid himself back. I know the article says that he loaned himself like a couple of $1 million for his reelection campaign, and then basically like wrote that off as a write-off. I don't know. I just think of the episode of The Office where Michael's like, you just write it off. He doesn't have to pay for it. And the accountant's like, that's not how that works.
Reminds me of how credit cards used to be. Just sign it. Look at it later.
Right.
It's not my problem right now.
Yeah. And then your credit's ruined forever.
Exactly.
Yeah. That's crazy. So I think that's really fascinating overall. So that one race, right, Representative Shaw versus Kevin Wallace in 2024, it was, I think, total in that race, the article says, was like over $1 million and in campaign spending, and another $313,000 in what's called independent expenditures. That's outside money. Which means it was the most expensive House race in state history. And, man, if this is the thing, right? If a typical House race is going to cost $80,000 and suddenly one race costs $1 million, that doesn't bode well for the future.
No, I feel like then the expectation is to be putting that amount of money into everything. And at that point, it's just getting out of hand.
Right. And this is my quote that I gave to Paul when he wrote this was like, this kind of stuff makes it unreachable for regular folks, right? Like if I don't have, well, even 80,000 to spend, but like presumably I could raise it. I don't believe that, but I don't know. Like people raise money all the time, right? So that's possible, but it's way different to raise 80,000 versus $1 million.
Yeah.
That's a big change. And it just means that like suddenly, I don't know, like we're being ruled by just
It
like
just
this.
feels like you're closing the gap and you're kind of just taking everyone else away from it. Like this is just
Yeah.
about you now. This isn't about the average person being in
Right.
government now. This is just about you.
Right. Right. And it, yeah, makes it like unattainable for everybody else. And this is the hard part is like people were like, well, why don't more people run for office?
It's expensive.
It's expensive. I mean, I would have to like quit my jobs in order to run. I can't afford to do that. But like any regular Joe or Jane or whatever's like looking at this and it's someone's like, hey, we want you to run. We think you'd be a great candidate. And maybe they're right. But it's like, we'll give you some phone numbers to call. But like, we expect this race to cost 80,000. You're like, okay, that like at least feels possible. But if someone's like, you're gonna have to raise $1 million.
No,
Well,
that's just not.
that's what a congressional race used to cost just a few years ago. And so that's a huge change. I mean, we're looking at, statewide, like gubernatorial races costing, 10 to 20 or 50 million. I think Joy Hoffmeister's campaign, or this might have been an outside, I remember seeing some article about spending in that race was like 50 million. And I was like, holy moly,
That's
it's a lot of money to spend and lose.
yeah.
It's a lot of money to spend and win for that matter.
Yeah.
But like, that's a hard pill to swallow, I
I
think.
don't. Yeah, that would make me. I have a trouble spending $20 at the store. Like having to spend 80 mil. No, thank you.
That's right. I have to stop at the liquor store on the way home to buy some stuff for my wife's birthday party, and I'm already
Yeah,
like,
you're like counting it up in your
Yeah.
head because it's like, that's plus that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
do I get the nice bourbon?
Yeah. Do you
or
get the expensive one or you
Yeah.
get the bottom shelf? Yeah.
That's right. Yeah, we're gonna go with a middle of the
Yeah.
road.
Find the middle ground.
Right. Probably some Bullet for those of you who are bourbon fans. Well, on a similar note, our last kind of news update from this week is Mark Wayne Mullen in the news. I don't have any theme music for Senator Mullen. This is also from Oklahoma Watch. And it was because I saw the first headline and like let it go, but then it happened again. I was like, well, we should talk about this, right? For the second time in 2 weeks, Senator Mark Wayne Mullen has filed late disclosures under the Stock Act. Stock is an acronym that stands for, I don't know, stupid trading above, I don't know, whatever. That he and his wife were months overdue in reporting their nearly 3 dozen stock and bond transactions, mostly sales, that totaled up to between $1.5 and $3.5 million. And so there's these rules, right? So we'll just cut to the chase. There's federal law that says if members of Congress are going to be buying or selling stock, they have to disclose it. Senator Mullen, like most, he's not on Robinhood. He's not doing it himself. He's not like me out there losing money, week after week, but he has a money guy or
Right.
lady who does
He's got
this.
a guy.
Yeah, he's got a guy that does this, and they're supposed to file this stuff. Now, presumably, he's like at least somewhat in the know. If someone is selling something for me that's going to cost me, or I'm going to make $1 million, give me a heads up.
Yeah.
Let me know. Hey, listen, Andy, we're going to sell these stock. Because if he's selling it, what's he going to do with it? Buy more stock? Buy a boat? I don't know. But they're supposed to report this within a certain time frame. And in some cases, Senator Mullen's reports were 2.5 years overdue. And so, of course, when the reporters reached out to Mullen's office, they said, this is like, it's like when you have to amend your tax return a couple of years later. It's no different than that. I'm like, well, it is different than that. It's not a tax return.
Yeah.
It's you complying with the Stock Act,
Yeah.
a law that only exists to explain how members of Congress are supposed to disclose their stock trades. And so, of course, he's not alone in this. There are others.
Right.
He is, one of our 2 senators. That's why we're talking about him. Nancy Pelosi. I don't even know if she's still in office. I haven't heard her name in a long time, but pretty famously, like there's like trading apps that follow her transactions and stuff too. Because we have to make disclosures in order for someone to follow it. So I guess someone's making some disclosures, but this is also why those like apps aren't really useful, because often you don't find out about the trade until like months later. And by then they've made the money
Right.
and you're just like tagging along. It's like me saying I discovered Taylor Swift right now. I'm like, clearly everyone else is already aware of it. But there's been more conversation about like alternatives or like ways to enhance this. But any kind of law that clamps down on the legislature or on Congress,
Right.
like they are hesitant to govern themselves, right? Lena, at the top of the show, we mentioned the low penalty for failing to disclose. Do you remember what the dollar figure was?
I want to say it was 250.
Yeah, like I think it was 200, 250, something like
Yeah.
that. I'm pretty sure it was
It's definitely less than 300.
Yeah. I mean, a $200 penalty. That's why I said that that's cheaper than a
Yeah.
speeding ticket.
Yeah.
So Senator Mullins, money guy, doesn't disclose a trade for 2 years, and the penalty is $200.
That does not make sense.
It really doesn't.
It feels like there should be a higher penalty.
Yeah.
Like at least something to make them kind of hesitate. Like maybe think, maybe think twice, maybe at least.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. That's a good perspective, Lena, because if a penalty doesn't hurt,
It's not gonna make any difference. They're not gonna change their ways because the penalty doesn't hurt.
right. And so the other thing is that like when they have to disclose this, they just disclose a range. So they
Right.
say, in this case, it was like, well, the total value was between $1.5 and $3.5 million, which is like
That's a big.
a big range. It could be
Yeah.
this much or twice this much and a little extra.
Yeah.
So let's cut it in the middle. Let's say even the low, let's say it was, well, 2.5
Right.
million. Okay, right in the middle. That's a lot of money. That's more than most Americans will ever see in their entire lives cumulatively, even if they saved every dollar they ever
Right.
earned. That's a wild thing. And if the penalty is $200, that is like less than 1/10,000th.
It's a slap on the wrist, really. Like it just
Right.
like yeah.
Right. Because if you, let's put it in like regular people numbers, if that fraction, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like if you sold a car for
Yeah.
$10,000 and you didn't tell your mom. And your mom's like, oh, you should have told me first, Lena. The penalty is $1.
I would really love that number.
You'd be like, I'm so sorry, Mom.
I'm sorry. Here's the dollar.
Here's a dollar.
So sorry. It's in quarters.
Right.
Sorry.
Right.
And then I might turn around and do it again.
Right.
Yeah.
Wild. That's wild. All right. Well, so listeners, I say all that not just to shame Senator Mullen and his money guy into doing the right thing, but to alert all of you, right, to think about what are we doing? Like, what are we as a country doing? Why is any of this okay? If it's not okay, may I suggest you send an email, a letter, make phone calls, do something. I know many of you are taking action in ways that you have not in a long time. There are people, golly, almost every day I see them downtown on Broadway, outside Coffee Slingers. Most folks know Senator Langford's district office is like up above Coffee Slingers here in Midtown. So there's people outside protesting. And then in the evenings, if I drive home and go up Broadway Extension, there are often people on the 63rd Street or Wilshire Bridge, one of those, with big signs. So like, and across the country, like our culture of like protesting is kind of coming back. And that's great. That's fine. That's good. I'm glad people are choosing to take action when maybe they didn't before. My urge to everyone is consider if your action is going to result in change, right? Maybe it will. There's lots of ways we can measure change. Maybe it's you are emboldening or inspiring other people who have similar sentiments and in showing them that it's possible to take action. Maybe it's like a low barrier entry. But undoubtedly, there's more we can do than holding signs, right? There are phone calls we can make. There is relationship building we can do. You don't have to just shout at the idea of somebody. I'm going to say that again. You can do more than just be mad at the idea of somebody. And I think often that's what like protesting is. They're like, I'm mad at Mark Wayne Mullen or I'm mad at James Langford. But they don't know them. They're like mad at
Their ideas, their policies.
yeah, and just like I'm mad at what they represent.
Right.
It is very different, and I would argue more impactful to find a way, however hard it might be, It's probably not as hard as you think. But to like build a relationship with that person and then to create ways to have conversations with them.
It's going to make more of an impact if they know you versus if they have no idea who you are.
Right, right. I'm not saying you have to like infiltrate their inner circle and like become their best friend and then like try to like win them over somehow. But I do think there's a way to like
saying hello when you see them is one, recognizing who they are is one way.
Right, right. That's a good example. Like Senator Langford, I don't know him. I don't think he knows my name. We've met on several occasions, maybe 3 or 4 or 5. Most of those at the airport or somewhere like, or a big public event where you meet lots of people. Yeah. But if you see the same face like 3 or 4 or 5 times, they are at least not familiar.
Right.
And so if I see him at the airport, like a couple of years ago, there was that big vote about immigration. He had an immigration plan that was, what in any other world was a terrible plan, but at the time it was pretty good. It was a consensus plan, bipartisan support. He proposed it and Trump really skewered it. And he kind of got a bunch of pushback. Like a bunch of MAGA folks got mad at James Langford, which was wild. And I saw him at the airport. I happened to be flying and he was like getting a coffee. And I was like a little nervous, but I went up to him and said, Senator Langford, like, Andy Moore, we've met a few times, but that, I just want to say thanks for trying. I know you got shot down on that, and you can't win them all, but, and like normally I would disagree with the policy, but I appreciate you trying.
Right.
And he seemed like genuinely like, hey, thanks, man. Like, and that was it. I'm not,
right,
again,
yeah.
like.
I mean, that's all it needs to be. It's just a little recognition for them doing the work that they're trying to do.
Right. And my goal is, right, to build up a rapport such that I can also say, hey, I think you may have missed the mark with this. And there are other elected officials from both parties that I have taken the time to build a relationship with to be able to say that. And I am not anyone special, just a guy, and anyone can do this, right? Sometimes it's just about being like, hey, like, I know you enough to know that this is not you.
You can do better.
You can do better, right? 1% better every day.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Okay. Well, let's move on. Talk about gerrymandering. Lena, I think we need to find some gerrymandering music. I don't think I have really anything on my. Hang on. Let me see what I got. No, a laugh track is probably the most appropriate kind of interlude. That's applause.
I heard the AC kick on, and for a second I thought the AC kicking on was one of your little sounds.
Oh, sound effects.
Yeah.
No, that's it. I think a sad trombone. Let's do that. Let's talk about gerrymandering. That's a good segue.
I like that.
Lena, you and I have spent a lot of the last couple of weeks discussing gerrymandering in the abstract. But we didn't talk about you. We should talk about you. You are a senior at UCO. Mm-hmm. And you're majoring in?
Mass communication or strategic communications.
All right. Strategic being different than mass?
Yeah, because, well, technically it's like all under the same umbrella because there's professional media and strategic communication. There's another one that I'm blanking on because that's not my major.
TikTok. I think it's TikTok.
Yeah, it's TikTok. You're right. But professional media is more of this, and strategic communication is more like PR. So
okay, excellent. Well, welcome to your first podcast. Yeah. I'm honored and thrilled and slightly amused that this is your first one. I'm glad this is like a little in your wheelhouse. Mm-hmm. But needless to say, gerrymandering is not part of your
daily life.
Right. I mean, it is, but you just don't know it yet. So you, being the excellent intern you are, prepared a list of questions about gerrymandering. I'm going to turn this over to you and let you ask the questions. I will try to be as succinct as I can in my responses.
Awesome. Okay. So what is gerrymandering? What does it mean?
Well, that you really came out of the gate strong on that one. Gerrymandering at its core is drawing political lines for political gain. Typically a partisan gain of like one party or the other, but not always. It is often just for the benefit of a single or a group of politicians. The name, do you know where the name comes from?
I do not.
Okay. Listeners might or might not. Way back, 1812, 1815, somewhere around there, there was a man in Massachusetts or Maryland, up in New England, the only part of the country that really existed back then, and named Elbridge Gary, actually, but it was spelled Gerry. This is how convoluted gerrymandering is. We can't even pronounce it correctly. Elbridge Gerry proposed a map that included the voters he liked and excluded the voters he didn't. And people said that it looked like a dragon or a salamander, really. And so they combined his last name and the word salamander into Gerrymander, which over time became gerrymander. This is much like the debate between GIF or GIF, which is a quick aside. Last week, my son was getting peanut butter out of the pantry, and we buy Justin's peanut butter, whatever that brand is, with the honey. And he was like, he's 14 or 13. So he's like, why don't you guys buy GIF or GIF or however you say it? And I was like, it's a different word. That's a J. It's clearly GIF. Anyway, I just thought it was funny that my son, even at his young age, was like aware of that dilemma.
Yeah.
He misapplied it, but I appreciate it.
It's still there.
Yeah. So the second part of your question, did you ask both parts?
I did not yet.
Okay, go ahead.
Why should I care how the lines are drawn?
Why should you care how the lines are drawn? You should care because the idea behind a representative democracy, which is what America is that all of us, regardless of our party affiliation, have equal representation. That you and everyone else in your district stand on equal footing. And now, that doesn't mean that every district's going to be 50-50 between two parties. Of course, in most of our history, we have more than two parties, so it's not going to be evenly distributed,
right.
Proportional. But what happens when lines are gerrymandered is that it increases what's called the number of wasted votes, right? So they draw districts to be increasingly red or increasingly blue, and that means all they need is one more vote than the other guy to win. And so when it's really lopsided one way or the other, then regardless of your party, your voice doesn't really matter, right? So if you're a Republican in a very red district, what does it matter? The Republican's going to win. If you're a Democrat in a really red district, what does it matter? The Republican's going to win. And it means that your vote doesn't count. It doesn't matter. It's disempowering.
So how does a map decide who wins the election?
So there's kind of two ways that maps get gerrymandered. Two main ways. They're called packing and cracking. And that deals with groups of people, right? So you think of a college campus like UCO, all of those voters get drawn into one district. They get packed into that district. And that means that, everyone's in that little or that part of the district. And that might be, they might pack voters into a district because they want to include all of them they can. That might be, so in a red district, they might pack in a lot of Republicans into several districts and then pack all the Democrats into another district. So you get redder and bluer districts. Cracking is the opposite, right? It's where they might divide it in half. In fact, if you look at the state legislative maps around, I don't know about Edmond, but I know at Norman, around the University of Oklahoma, the campus is pretty big. And it's but not all of campus is included in the same district, right? There's blue districts. And so all of the housing, all the student housing is in one district, and then the rest of campus is in another. Well, this allows the Democrat to get all those youthful liberal votes, and then it also allows a Republican to have sway over campus. When we all know that isn't OU kind of one thing, a diverse melting pot of people, and
right.
And even the lines I think cut off Campus Corner from the university, and they probably have some shared interests. And so a better example is Oklahoma's congressional map. So we have 5 congressional districts. The whole state is divided into 5 districts. There was a big change this last cycle, which I'm sure we'll talk about, but the way that they redrew the lines, Oklahoma City is cut between 3 of those districts. And so basically South OKC and Southwest OKC got carved out, right? So Oklahoma City got cracked in half. And that is largely a Latino area of town. All of those voters got lumped into the 3rd district, which is Frank Lucas's district, and that's like the Panhandle and all of western Oklahoma, all the way up, to Canadian County, South Oklahoma City, and then it goes up north and like goes around. So they really scooped out the Latino community and put them into this other district. And their argument was, well, there's lots of Latino voters in Guyman. And I'm like, well, Guyman is a very long way away. And
Yeah, that's not where we're at.
Right. Aside from the fact that they both happen to be Latino, that doesn't mean they have
Any of the same views.
Right,
like,
or shared interests, right? They have very different lives.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Okay. All right. Does gerrymandering mean my vote doesn't really count? And if so, whose vote is actually counting?
So I kind of referenced this earlier. Like, your vote does count less.
Right. Yeah.
It dilutes everyone's votes. Again, from both parties.
Right.
Gerrymandering is bad for both sides.
So is it the politicians who are really winning in this case, like the people who are dividing them up?
Yeah, right. Gerrymandering is a way to ensure that incumbents get protected so that you can keep getting reelected. And if you can't get reelected, you want to make sure someone from your party is going to get elected. And so it means that it's a way for politicians to control the outcome of elections, which is not fair.
That's not great. I don't like that. Is that why some are so weirdly shaped?
Yeah. Yes. Not exclusively.
Sure, there are some that are just a little odd.
Yeah. So like when you're doing redistricting, which is the process of redrawing all the district lines, happens every 10 years, or in the cases of Texas and California and some other states, it's happening more often than that. That's a whole thing. But a good map has districts that are compact, that are contiguous, meaning they have to, you can't have like, Oklahoma City and also Stillwater. Those are disconnect unless it was like I-35 the whole way. But that would not be compact for sure. So compact, contiguous, and that districts should follow, natural boundaries or other political boundaries. So things like rivers or lakes, or like county lines or municipal boundaries. A good example, I have to go back and look now, but I know Lake Overholser in Oklahoma City, the county line between Oklahoma and Canadian County goes right through the middle of the lake. And so like in theory, the lake was divided, which is, there's not a lot of folks that live around it. So like that kind of made sense.
Right.
But in other cases, some districts have like meandering lines, and you can kind of tell because it looks like a river, and that's probably why it is.
Right.
But then often you get into neighborhoods.
Right, which is where it's really happening.
Yeah. I spent time in 2019 driving around the state. Anywhere I could find where a map like bifurcated a street, where like this side of the street is in one district and right across the street is another district, and I held up signs of like, these two voters see each other every day and they live in different districts because they're across the street from each other. That is almost always avoidable. There's a very few cases where it's not.
So this is something that they could change if they wanted to. This is not something that is permanent.
Right. No, they make a decision of where to draw every one of those lines. The districts have to be equal, the number of people. You can't have a district with 12 people and a district with 12,000 people. At the legislative level, at the congressional level, it has to be like to the person equal. At the state legislative and like, county commissioner districts, there's like a little more, like a 5% buffer, because it's harder. That way you don't have to break up neighborhoods necessarily, but yeah, it's definitely avoidable.
Why is it not illegal? Why is this legal for people to do? Why is there not a law against this?
Well, that's because the people who draw the lines make the laws. The same reason that the state legislature is not subject to the Open Records Act, because they don't want to be.
And there's no like law in place that is somewhat could take care of this. There's nothing right now.
Not in Oklahoma. So federal law, under the Voting Rights Act of 1965 or whatever, there are provisions around racial gerrymandering that you cannot divide communities of color in a way that would deprive them of the ability to elect like someone from their community. Right. So those claims have been there, and the Supreme Court has basically said historically that racial gerrymandering is illegal. And so in some cases, states have to redraw the lines for
Okay.
that. North Carolina's done it a bunch. Florida, Ohio, I think, has got to redraw theirs for these reasons. When it comes to partisan gerrymandering, so gerrymandering just for political gain in those ways, based on partisanship, the Supreme Court has basically said that's a political issue. It's up to the states. So the Supreme Court just a couple of years ago, the case was Moore versus Harper. They like basically kind of said, not us. Like that's a state problem. You all figure it out. Well, then the state courts were like, okay, like we'll let it happen. And there's I think grave concern, and I think it's well founded that the judiciary at the federal level, as it stands today, is eroding the Voting Rights Act. They're basically saying regular people can't file a case saying like this is a violation of Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act, which is what we used to be able to do. Like if I was affected somehow, I could feasibly like be a petitioner in a case, and the court has basically said no, you can't. Only states can file those cases, and no state's going to because
Right.
they want to handle it themselves.
Right. Wow. So what does gerrymandering mean in Oklahoma?
In Oklahoma, at the state legislative race or state legislative level, the maps could be better. The last cycle, it meant that every incumbent was protected. Like there was some concern that they might merge districts, especially among some of the Democrats, and like force them to run against each other. That didn't happen. So all the incumbents got protected. Now, of course, they all have term limits. So like they're all going to be out of, almost everyone in the legislature will be out of office by the next time we do redistricting, if not everyone. I think there's only like 4 that might have still been there. And so it's like, why are you drawing districts based on where you live when none of you will be in office the next time?
How is this going to affect you?
Right, exactly. And then at the congressional level, there's a huge impact. So as I mentioned, those 5 districts, folks might remember that Congressional District 5 used to include most of Oklahoma City, most of Oklahoma County. And after the redistricting, District 5 got shifted east. And so it's a little bit of Oklahoma County and then like Pottawatomie County out to Seminole and Shawnee. And then Oklahoma, the rest of it got kind of carved out into CD3. And then Tom Cole, who represents Congressional District 4, still has like Tinker and like that southeastern side. And he's always had that in like southern Oklahoma because he has Tinker and Fort Sill down in Lawton. So I used to live at 23rd and May, and now I live at 23rd and Penn. I moved a mile, 1.1 miles, I think, and I switched congressional districts. Just basically by crossing 23rd Street. And so it's really weird now that like, my fellow constituents include Weatherford, Elk City, Sayre, Woodward, Guyman, Felt, all these Buffalo, Beaver, all these places like Enid, I think Ponca City, even like CD3 is huge because it's sparsely populated, except for Oklahoma County. And what's wild about this is it also means that theoretically, CD3, 4, and 5 could all be represented by someone who lives in Oklahoma City. Now, it would be tough to win because those are rural districts, but they very clearly like divided up the urban area so that the urban vote was diluted, right? They cracked the urban areas. And I'm not saying that anyone's needs are better or worse than someone else, but it does mean that like the needs of Oklahoma City are now somehow like kind of divided among 3 members of Congress. And it makes it harder to advocate for what your city needs.
So that's probably why the community feels like it's very split. 'Cause
Yeah.
it feels like everyone is on their own side almost.
Yeah, exactly.
Is there a way regular people can have any say in the map, or is that just not possible?
Yes and no. So the last redistricting cycle in 2021, when the legislature redrew all these maps, right? So the legislature draws their own maps and the congressional maps. And they also help draw the county level maps.
Not be like a second party person who has no affiliation with the group that they're doing. Is that just not how we do it?
That's not how we do it, but we could. So this last cycle, they did allow the public to submit maps, and they held some community events. Now these town halls were held in December of 2020 and January of 2021, which was the deepest, darkest part of the COVID pandemic, when we should not be gathering people. No. I was unable to attend many of those because my mom was in the hospital,
of course,
from COVID and died, right? So like, I remember them being like, "Oh, we're having these meetings," and I just wanted to be like,
"So we just haven't done it again since." Is that part
right?
of it?
Because we do it once every 10 years.
Oh, okay, right, of course.
Other states, though, Arizona, Michigan, California, there's several others, have what's called independent redistricting commissions, which are what you just said. They're a commission of regular folks who are not politicians, not lobbyists, not related to politicians or lobbyists, who like don't have any stake in the actual outcome of the election. And it's a commission of those folks evenly divided between parties who say, okay, we're going to make this as nonpartisan as you can, and let them draw the lines. And what we find is that the maps that commissions draw are more fair. They are more competitive.
Why can't we have that over here then? Why can't we take that?
We would like to, right? So I know some of our listeners remember I ran an effort. I ran a ballot campaign to do this. And golly, the last couple of weeks, people are coming out of the woodwork being like, hey, we got to do that. I'm like, yeah, I'm still with you. Like, let's get talking. So listeners, if you are interested in ending gerrymandering in Oklahoma, send us an email, right? Email podcast@letsfixthis.org. It'll come to me, and we will make it happen.
So I guess my next question is, how do you get involved in drawing the maps and such? How do you get involved in that?
Yeah. Get involved in an organization that's leading this. Like, the first step is we got to change the laws. The legislature is not going to do it themselves, I don't think, right? Although what's funny right now is there's a lot of Republicans who are really nervous about what Gavin Newsom is doing in California.
Right.
And they're like, oh my God, because California has proposed a law and with new maps, and the law is like, listen, we know that an independent commission of citizens drew these maps, but for this one time only, we want you voters to throw those maps out and use these like highly partisan political maps. Now, Californians are a wily bunch, despite how they are portrayed by red states. And they, more Californians voted for Trump than Texans. Like, it's a big ass state, and there's a lot of conservatives there. Big. So they're basically asking Californians to willingly set aside the good governance that they have. Now, for one time only, but like, everyone's a little nervous about that, right?
That's just I worry that would just be a spiral. Oh, this worked over here. Let's try this over here.
Just one more time, I promise. Like,
just one more.
Right. We can
one
get
more
one
bluey.
more.
One more bluey.
That's right. Just like my daughter with one more bluey. That's exactly right. That's a deep cut, Lena. So we'll see what happens, right?
Yeah.
That election is supposed to be in November, where the voters will get to decide. And right now, I mean, it's like everyone's popular because they don't like that Texas is doing it also. But I think when it hits the ballot, like, a lot of voters are going to be like, oof, I get what you're doing. And maybe, a lot of blue voters might be like, I get what you're doing, Newsom, and I support this, except I don't want us to backslide on the good governance steps we've made.
Right.
And I think conservatives in red states like Oklahoma should see this. When I talked to, Democrats who used to be in charge in Oklahoma in like the 90s, and I said, why didn't you guys pass a commission back then? They all said, oh, we should have. We didn't because we thought we'd always be in power, which is what I hear from Republicans today. Oh, we're going to be in power for another 20 or 50 years. That's what Democrats said too. And they lost it in 2 cycles, and they've been blocked out for 30 years now, right? And so it's like, if you have the shot, you should take it and do the right thing. Mm-hmm. Fight about something else.
Yeah.
But let the maps be fair.
Yeah. I feel like that's really all of my questions. feel like unless there's any other ones in there that I wrote down that you wanted to, I feel like that was all the ones I liked.
No, I think those are good questions. You did have one question where you said, does redistricting affect rural Oklahoma differently than cities like Oklahoma City and Tulsa? And I've been thinking about that this whole conversation, and like, yes and no. I mean, redistricting in Oklahoma generally is done to disempower urban areas and like give more power to rural areas. And I'm not saying that's good or bad. I'm just kind of saying that's kind of what happens, right? Like you give, by dividing the cities into, dividing Oklahoma City into 3 different districts, you are, like disunifying our voice.
Right.
You could have drawn the 5th district with, you just take Oklahoma County, right? It's a rectangle, and you remove 2 precincts. And those 2 precincts are basically Tinker Air Force Base. So you keep those in the 4th district, like where they've been for years. And then you've got a perfectly rectangular, very compact district with just enough people that adheres to all the other guidelines. It is a very purple district, which means that everybody's vote really does count. Mm-hmm. It might mean that like congressional elections come down to just a few hundred votes.
Man, that's like the dreamland for your
Yes.
your opinion, your
It's
vote to
wild.
really matter.
Right. Can you imagine like feeling like
My
your
vote doesn't get thrown away.
Right.
Like it's gonna matter.
Right.
That's wild.
It's wild. So, we'll see. I think everyone's watching what's happening in California and Texas and Indiana and Missouri and Ohio and a bunch of other states. And what gets me, and I think Gaddy and I had this conversation last week, is like the parties might go through all this and spend hundreds of millions of dollars trying to gerrymander states. And once the election happens next year, those seats are not assured to any party. So the Republicans might lose seats in Texas. The Democrats might lose seats in California. And if next year's election as a midterm is a typical swing election where the party that is out of power, so opposite the president, so right now that would be the Democrats, or the out of power party, they typically win back.
Right. I
seats.
do remember that.
And an average swing election is like 30 to 35 seats. Well, from what I've read and heard, I think the maximum that they could possibly get, like on net, right? Like Republicans get more, Democrats get more, so it all kind of comes out in the wash. They might be able to get 10 seats more, but if it's a typical wave of like 30, 35, they'll still lose. And so it's like, why are we spending, this goes back to finance, hundreds of millions of dollars on what? TV ads? I don't even know what they're spending money on. These Newsom's got to spend money on ad campaigns to convince people to gerrymander themselves.
I do think I can't remember. Maybe I have seen some Newsom commercials actually. Now that I think about it, I wouldn't be surprised.
Speaking of Newsom and stuff we've seen online, I'm sure most of our listeners have seen the tweets from his office, right? It's not really from him. It's from
his office.
This like Latina staffer who is a wizard, apparently.
She knows what she's doing.
Yeah. I was talking to a friend the other night, and because they had posted several of them, and I was like, do you think Democrats realize that the feeling that you feel when you read these Newsom tweets that are written like Trump tweets, right? The feeling of what Newsom is saying is the exact same feeling that Trump supporters feel when he tweets. Like we look at his, like you look at Trump's tweets and you're like, oh, that's ridiculous. Like that's terrible grammar and like you're making no sense. And if we didn't have that context for Newsom's tweets, we would say the same thing.
Right, absolutely.
But at the base level, right, it's the feeling of this guy's on my side and he is making fun of people I already dislike. And that, it's like the exact same feeling. And I hope that it...
I will say, because it's a bit of a slippery slope when it comes down to it, because if we're fighting fire with fire, it almost feels like, should we really be doing that? Aren't we better than that?
Right.
In a way. But I totally understand what you're saying.
And yeah, I mean, I said we a second ago.
Yeah.
Like, I'm an independent voter, so no skin off my nose. But like, we're fighting fire with fire,
Right,
and the
exactly.
whole world burns.
Exactly.
Even the other day, President Obama put out a message about gerrymandering. And even his message was basically like, hey guys, we all know that gerrymandering's wrong. but like in this case, we kind of got to do it. And I was like, Barry, no, we don't.
I did
I
not
get,
see that.
I get what you're saying.
I understand the thought behind it. It just, what's going to be left if we keep doing this?
Right.
Like, it's what Earth is going to be left for
Right.
us.
Right. And the other thing, that's exactly right. And the other thing that happens is that like two wrongs don't make a right.
Exactly.
And what it does is like it turns off more of the public.
Well, I will say, because I don't know if I should be speaking for my mother, but I know she doesn't love that he's like going almost as crazy as Trump. Not the same way, but she doesn't love that he's acting crazy, because she worries it's going to make us look a little dumb. It's going to make us look like we're a little bit like Trump. And I understand he's doing it in a way that's not really like that, but it's still like it makes people worry. The average person seeing that is going to see that and assume he's just talking like Trump.
Right. Right.
Without the context.
Right. I don't want a president who resorts to calling people ridiculous nicknames.
Right.
I don't care if it's Tiny Hands or Little Marco or whatever.
Yeah.
Right. Like, I get that this is like a thing they're doing for social media. I just want to make sure that we and all of our listeners are grounded in the reality that like, if you're celebrating this, that's fine. I'm not saying you shouldn't, but like just recognize that there are other people out there celebrating it when it happens the other way.
Right.
And that makes us more alike than it does different. And what we should realize is that the real losers are voters in this. If we gerrymander these states worse, Texas is already the worst gerrymandered state. And they're going to gerrymander it even more.
I was going to say, it can get worse.
California, if you gerrymander California more, and then you gerrymander Missouri and Ohio and Indiana and whatever other states.
It's just not going to stop.
It's not going to stop. And like, that doesn't make anything really better long term, right?
The goal would be getting rid of gerrymandering, not using it to our benefit.
Right. And, you know, something we don't have a chance to really talk much about today because it's a much bigger conversation is like the other remedies to gerrymandering. Independent commissions are one. We know they work, they're effective, and they don't require voters to like change what they're doing.
Right.
The big fix, like the way to really fix this, is to move to a multi-member or a proportional representation system with multi-member districts. And this changes the whole way that things work. And I think it would be a shock to voters. It's really easy. It makes sense. And like, it is good, but it eliminates the ability to gerrymander or need to do it. So I think that's what we should be looking at. We will do an episode about that in the future. I got to call in the big guns for that to help explain it.
You mean I'm not the big guns? I'm not the knowledgeable person?
You could be by then.
That's true.
But there's some like national experts I work with that I think are probably like
a little better than me.
Equipped than you and I. Yeah. And I will say like proportional representation, even 2 years ago, I was like, wow, that's a pipe dream. And the more I've learned about it and heard, I'm like, oh, that works. As far as I know, there's only one city in America that uses it. It's Cambridge, Massachusetts, which is where Harvard is, right? Like inside of Boston. There used to be a bunch of cities that used it, and they've kind of moved away. And the best we can tell is they moved away because politicians wanted to assure their own victories. And they were like, you know what we should do? Stop giving voters the ability to like be represented proportionally. We should just run the table on them. And so that was really, I mean, this has been going on since 1776, right? Like the slow erosion of our rights, the beautiful aspirational ways in which our government was constructed in the beginning. Not all of it was good, right? But like this whole setup was like generally pretty good. And the way that it has eroded to where it is now is something we should take a look at. But okay. Lena, I think we're at the end of our episode.
Awesome. This was fun. This was new for me.
Yeah. Thanks so much for being here. It was a good time being here. Listeners, thank you for being here as well. Next week, I'll be on vacation next Friday. Maybe we'll do it earlier in the week. We'll figure something out. Mm-hmm. You may just get a quick episode with just me, middle of the week. Who knows? Listeners, thanks for being here. If you appreciate what we're doing with Let's Pod This or with our organization, Let's Fix This, please donate. Please. Like, we only exist because of donations from people like you. It makes a big difference. You can donate at letsfixthis.org/donate. It's real easy. If you're watching this online, I'll put a link in the description somewhere to make it even easier on you. I'll put a link in the show notes too if you're listening to it on audio. Starting in September, I will return to the airwaves on KOSU Radio for This Week in Oklahoma Politics. I'm grateful to them for the opportunity and looking forward to doing that. And that will become the outlet for most of our weekly updates on stuff. This platform here at Let's Pod This is going to be for bigger conversations, longer conversations, deeper conversations about issues and not just like a recap of the news. So if you've been using us for the weekly recap, I appreciate you. But please consider subscribing to This Week in Oklahoma Politics, which is also in all of your podcast apps. And on that, we'll wrap up. Thank you for being here. Remember, decisions are made by those who show up, and we'll see you next week.